broadcasting on the Googles and the YouTubes. And let's do this. Hello and welcome to What Else Is On the Show. I don't like how I said hello there. Like,
or what else is on?
Fuck, I didn't even catch that.
Oh my god.
Oh gosh, it's so. Hello and welcome to ElseNerds, a show on Galactic. Let me actually do the. Hello and welcome to ElseNerds, a production of Galactic Network. I'm Gregor Sprague. And did I mess up? Oh wait, I don't want that one. There we go. All right, let's try that one more time. Hello and welcome to ElseNerds, a production of Galactic Network. I'm Gregor Sprague.
And I'm Corey Scott.
For all info on this show, including show notes and subscription links, go to ElseNerds.com. And for other Galactic Network programs, go to gncast.com.
On ElseNerds, we tend to say what we think without thinking too much about it, and that includes us maybe making with the potty talk.
Fuck yes. So we were off last week because Corey was sick, and
thanks for my dirty laundry. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, Corey was ill, and I was busy working and trying to get caught up on comic books, which is like my never-ending quest, and all that. So, yeah. So, Corey, how's your past 2 weeks been? I see now that you're healthier.
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of back and forth, and I don't know if it's an age thing or if it's just like I'm falling apart. But last week was particularly rough, and I was kind of worried. Yesterday was not a great day either, so we had to move pot for this week to tomorrow, which is why we'll not hit our normal Tuesday schedule. I think that's a first for us. But we're going to double up by giving people a special holiday episode for Halloween with Matt Vincent next week. Either way, I'm good. I'm glad to be here, although I'm going to be gone for a month after this. So I'm anxious to see what you guys are going to get to do while I'm not around. Last year, you guys really made some great stuff happen, and I'm excited to see you do it again.
No, yeah, definitely. I'm excited. Speaking of which, hey, if you want to be a co-host, hit us up. mail@elsenerds.com.
I love the credit I give you. Like, you guys did such great stuff. Yeah, we're really going to nail that this time. By the way, anybody, please be on fucking ElseNerds show with us right now.
Well, I'm not going to put people on blast, but I did throw it on the open chat today in Slack for Galactic Netcasts and didn't even get crickets. So,
well,
yeah.
Crickets has their own show that they're doing right now. It's way more popular than ours.
Yeah, they get 5 viewers, where we get 5 when we have Jackie Hearn on. But no, so let's get to the news. And the first news story is a sad news story. And that is that I'll go ahead and call him comic book legend. But Steve Dillon, one of the co-creators of Preacher, was currently drawing the Punisher over at Marvel. He has passed away at the age of 54. And
yeah,
this is one that I didn't realize until like I was looking. I'm like, wait, oh, he was doing Punisher. Oh, damn, Becky Clooner needs to find a new artist now. Like it wasn't like that cynical, but it was just like, shit, how is whoever is going to replace him on that Punisher book going to be able to top that?
Oh, I don't think anybody is ever going to even try to top Steve Dillon. His artwork is kind of one of a kind. I mean, I discovered him in Preacher. That's where I first got introduced to his work, working with Garth. But he had worked on Hellblazer before that, and they went on and they did a very important kind of seminal Punisher run when Marvel Knights was happening, which is when Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti were taking over, basically made an imprint within Marvel, and that led to Joe becoming publisher in chief of Marvel down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Steve's one of those guys. It's sad how often this happens, where you lose somebody in the comic industry, and it's not just that you're losing a great artist or a great writer or something, but often these people are just so beloved, and nobody has bad things to say about Steve Dillon. They only have great stories to tell of what kind of person he is. Not to mention his body of work, but just the guy, like just talking to him, knowing him, hanging out and partying with him, getting drunk with him, those kinds of things. Like, this is it's not necessarily that it's a tight-knit group. And that's kind of the thing, is that for everybody to have all these stories, all these beloved memories about him, that's a big deal, because you can just kind of sit in your own corner or work with the people that you work with. But I mean, Neil Gaiman has nice things to say about him when he was a young writer and just starting out, before he landed Sandman. Seth Rogen obviously has things to say about him, because the whole Preacher series is based around his and Garth's run on the book. But just so many people love Steve. And even if you're just a fan, even if you're just one of those guys that, like, I just like to see his drawings, there's nobody else really like him, because his stuff isn't overly, like, stylized comic booky. It feels realistic. Like, so much of the beginning of Preacher was people talking, just kind of sitting around talking, but it felt real. It felt like you were looking at real people on the page. And that's why people have been begging for a movie or a TV adaptation of this for so long, because you just see these characters and you kind of know who they should be up on the screen. Steve's work is magical, but then he could do the really bizarre, grotesque stuff. He could take you off into a completely different direction by doing things like creating Arseface, creating some of the weird characters, doing the stuff he did in Punisher, like with the fight between Punisher and the Russian, and the whole scene of I remember in particular a scene where Punisher is using Spider-Man as a shield, as a human shield. So as this guy is trying to punch Punisher, Punisher's just holding Spider-Man up, and Spider-Man's getting bashed in the face over and over again. And when Spider-Man wakes up, he's like, what happened to me? And Punisher's like, we had a team up. You were great. It was very strange for me to see Steve go from doing the stuff he was doing in Preacher, which was in a lot of ways very realistic, very down to earth, but also fantastical. But then to see him go and tackle what was superheroes, but in a way that was complementary to who he was as an artist. And I think that's a really great statement about Steve's relationship with Garth, is Garth wrote stuff towards what Steve's art was, and they work so well together. And obviously Garth's the only person he ever worked with, and it's not to say that they can't do things without each other, but there was something really magical about them working together.
No, I want to give some stats here for you on his career. So his career spans across 5 decades and 2 continents. His first professional work came when he was 16 years old in the debut issue of Hulk Weekly for Marvel's UK subsidiary, and he would later go on to do work for 2008, or appear in. His art would appear in stories for 2000 AD, Doctor Who Weekly, the classic Warrior anthology, and was including a chapter of Alan Moore's groundbreaking Miracle Man series. He did both sides here. He didn't just do Marvel, but he also did DC. He did stuff for Animal Man, Atom. Vertigo is probably where most people know him because of Preacher. And the dude was great. And in addition to his artwork, Dillon will also be remembered for co-creating and co-editing the British comics anthology Deadline with Brett Ewan in 1988, which published early work from Gorilla's co-creator Jamie Hewlett. So think about this: Steve Dillon didn't do what he did, we wouldn't have the Gorillas.
Tank Girl.
That's
Tank
something
Girl was another Deadline strip. Yeah, a lot of people say, I heard people saying that they were seeing Steve's zine, which was his work before he got picked up by an actual publisher that he's doing himself. And at 15 years old, they were like, "Who is this guy? We need to find out more about him." They were emulating his work. He's. I mean, what we think of as comic book art in America is very different from what happens in the UK. But it was at a point in time that in the 90s that a lot of that stuff was coming over to the US and became like a bigger thing. It became the big thing for a lot of titles. And obviously there was the Image guys too that were doing their own stuff that were very straight superhero, but the whole Vertigo movement was around people like Steve and that like-mindedness of telling stories that weren't about flash so much as like solid storytelling about, you know, drawing stuff on the page that pulled you into it in a completely different way. Yeah, and just all around terrific person. It's very sad to see this happen. And 54 is, you know, I know I'm 45. It's really close to my age, honestly.
Yeah.
That's way too young.
Well, no, and it's, I mean, B sort of has it right when he says "fuck 2016," because, I mean, you look at the beginning of the year and it's almost like, all right, we're losing a lot of great Brits because, I mean, you know, we lost Bowie, we lost Alan Rickman. Now we're losing Steve Dillon. There's probably others that I'm not even thinking of that are Brits. You know, we lost Prince, but he's American, and it's like, good Lord, man, do we need more knights or something over there? like, yeah. I mean, this is just horrible. Yeah, Prince was from another planet. But it's just like, can we get done? Can people quit dying now? Sort of deal. But yeah, I mean,
unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
It does if I say it does. Damn it. So on to the next story. The next story is that Deadpool 2 loses director Tim Miller over creative differences. So this one was one that I was like, is there really a story here? And then Beat pointed out, well, we're talking about it an awful lot right now before the show. So I'm like, touche, sir. Okay, so we will talk about it. So I guess him and Ron Reynolds couldn't decide over who to cast as Cable.
That's part of it, and that's rumor and stuff. I don't think there's been an actual statement released on it, but yes, one of the things that people say has caused some disagreement between Ryan and Tim was that Tim wanted Kyle Chandler from Friday Night Lights to play Cable, who is obviously, you know, might be age appropriate. I don't know too much about Kyle's work, but I could see that it could work. It's just not who I would picture as Cable, like as my first jumping to, oh, it's going to be this guy. But then that said, you know, so many of the people that have been used in the Marvel and the Fox films based around Marvel properties have not been the people that were my first go-to as, oh, yeah, of course. You know, other than Iron Man, you know, other than the inspired choice of like, yeah, we're going to get Robert Downey Jr. to play Iron Man. Oh, shit, that makes total fucking sense. A lot of the other people were like, oh, well, we'll have to wait and see. And that's the internet being kind. But the other part of this, as I understand it, was Miller wanted to go more stylized, wanted to do something that was a little bit more straight superhero after doing what they did with the first film. And Ryan's like, no, we have to keep the comedy up. We have to keep the hardcore R rating up. We have to do all these things. We have to continue doing what we did and just like make it bigger, make it better. Although he had some weird tweet that he deleted after the fact that was basically, where would you like to see the big fight scene happen in Deadpool 2? Choice A is a bridge or choice B is a bridge. And that's kind of been interpreted as Miller wasn't coming up with new ideas or like any kind of expansive ideas, since there was such a huge scene with a bridge in the first one. Ryan felt like we weren't getting anywhere new with this. I don't know. I mean, this is all inside baseball, and it really is hard to say one way or the other, if it's the right choice or the wrong choice. Obviously, it's easier to replace the director than it is the star, and not just the star of the movie, but someone who's been such a vocal proponent of the movie for so long, who pushed it to happen, someone who has been in so many different kinds of ad campaigns to help sell the movie, has really put himself out there as an actor, like went above and beyond, which is not to say that Tim Miller's part was not extraordinarily important to the success of the first film. Visually, it's a great movie. Everything about Deadpool works in a way that I would not have expected from a Deadpool movie unless you get it 100% right. And they got it 100% right easily. And to have it to be the most successful R-rated movie ever is a big deal. So Fox went and put their backing behind Ryan, which is probably not the wrong thing to do. But it is too bad, because when you see something that's hit that level of success, you kind of want to get the team back together again. You want them to get the chance to do the next thing, up their game, whatever. And maybe sometimes it's better not to do that. Maybe it's better to bring somebody else in. So the real question becomes, who, one, should be Cable, I guess, in Ryan Reynolds' eyes, and two, who should be directing this sequel?
Yeah. I mean, I look at Kyle Chandler, and if this is who they were, Tim Miller was wanting, he's too young. I could see him, playing a different mutant. But for like I could see him playing like Forge, maybe.
Keep in mind, Kyle Chandler is 51 years old.
He looks young though.
Well, and it's not like there's ever been the use of prosthetics or makeup to make people seem younger.
No, yeah.
Or older.
Because I look at, I looked at some of the fan casting, and they had who was it? The guy from the Lights Out and Avatar.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about, and he has pitched himself very hard at this. The problem is that he's not looked at as like a terrific actor. Although Lights Out did very well. Stephen Lang, we're being told by Evan in our chat.
That's why
thank
we
you, producer Evan.
No bucks.
Yeah. Stephen Lang, Ron Perlman's been mentioned. There's a lot of people who are like iconically, this guy would be a great Cable, but would they work well in the sense of what Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool would want as against a Cable? Is it someone that he wants to or could work with? There's a lot of different things you can look at. Plus, they want somebody who's going to be young enough to probably launch another franchise with Cable. The expectation is that this guy is going to go on to do X-Force. And it's all great if we got the guy who looks like Cable as, 50 years old, 60 years old, whatever. But we don't want to have a Dumbledore situation on our hands. We don't want to have somebody who is just here for one film and then has to be replaced next movie in. Because not because they're going to die necessarily, but because maybe it's physicality of these roles is very difficult. Again, the Robert Downey Jr. example, the guy is in really great shape. But at the same time, most of his parts, as far as the action, are done CGI with a suit. Like, we're seeing a close-up of his face, so we buy into the fact that he's in the suit, but he's not really in the suit. Do they need somebody who is maybe a little bit younger but can play older, or can play stern and serious? And maybe that's who this guy was. But you've got to have a good relationship with, and which I'm not saying he doesn't, you got to have a good relationship with the other star of the film. You've got to be able to have a good interplay between the two of the characters. And some things work and some things don't. And if they did tests and stuff and Ryan's like, I'm not feeling us working together, I don't know that the audience is going to feel this either, then maybe he just wasn't the right choice. And I get that. The other thing is, who would you like to see direct Deadpool 2? Because the internet is speaking right now about who they think should direct Deadpool 2, and I don't know that that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, they're wanting like what is it? It's Quentin Tarantino. But didn't we say there was another one that people were wanting?
There's quite a few.
Yeah.
I think Matthew Vaughn has come up. Obviously, people who've done other big actiony comic booky stuff.
I could see Matthew Vaughn. I could see Matthew Vaughn because, like, the person I would cast is someone who can blend comedy with action, like Tim Miller did with the first Deadpool. You know, because I freaking laughed my ass off in that movie when I saw it. I think I saw it opening weekend, if not the next weekend. And it's one of those movies that, you know, they had the action sequences, you know, especially in the third act. They had the, okay, let's shut the fuck up and actually fight here moments. But before that there was a whole bunch of comedy. And so I honestly think they're going to need someone who can do that good blend.
Beatmaster is saying Kevin Smith. The only problem I would have with that is Kevin gets comedy well. I don't know that he does action well, and certainly not the huge budgeted action that we've seen from this.
Yeah,
Kevin's biggest, like, I think, mainstream release was, oh god, it was Cop Out, and that was not a great example of what Kevin would do in a film. His other stuff, his more personal stuff, I think is better. And if they want to keep it lean and mean, sure. But I think that there's something for a director who already has that kind of background and aesthetic quality in place. People who are really campaigning right now are the Suska sisters, who are the twin sisters who've done things like American Mary and Dead Hooker in a Trunk. They are big Deadpool fans. They are up and coming directors. They're also the hosts of that Elevator series on Sci-Fi. And there is, well, I mean, I'm not saying they make the show, but it's a sci-fi show. But they're people who are, they've got the right mentality for it. You know, they're definitely talented, and it's possible. It would be interesting because it's young, hungry directors who are going to come into it and be able to be kind of somewhat like yes men or women to what Fox is going to have to say, and certainly to what Ryan himself is going to want to say about it. The question is who's going to come in, who's going to have the ability to have a good vision, but make that vision work for these other parties who obviously have a lot at stake in it, and enjoy being part of a franchise, which, you know, is again going to hopefully lead into a bigger franchise down the road.
Here, I'm gonna throw one out. It probably wouldn't work, but I could see some things working here if it did. What about Edgar Wright? Because Edgar Wright does comedy, and he did, you know, with Scott Pilgrim, he did do action very well, and the scenes from Ant-Man.
Absolutely. If we have 10 years for him to work on it and then get pissed off and walk away, then surely I think Edgar Wright is a great. No, I would love that. I would absolutely love that. But I don't know if he is going to want to get back into that kind of deal again. You know, I think it's kind of like the Joss Whedon thing. Joss Whedon is making noises of like, oh, I'd love to do a Star Wars film now. That I'm seeing what's happening with Rogue One, because I don't want to deal with all that shared universe bullshit of like, I'm part of this like heavy corporation thing crushing down on me. Oh wait, you can do stuff over on the side. you can do stuff and have it not be like Luke and Leia and Han and all the big shit, but do something that's like a side story with other characters. That'd be fucking awesome. And I think that's where Edgar Wright is probably at now too. He's like, I've done really well with my own movies, or I've done things that were other people's properties, but I had most of the creative control over. But the Marvel thing didn't click with him, and not for any fault of who he is as a director. But I get it. I understand why. And I don't know if he would be like, well, then I'll just run over to fucking DC at Time Warner, or I'll run over to Fox, or I'll run over to Sony and still have their dicks in my ear every day I turn around. No,
but I could see if they did Edgar Wright and it just for Deadpool 2. There's more jokes that they could be cracking. Like, and you thought like Deadpool is going, and you thought this would take 10 years to make.
I mean, they could definitely make those kind of jokes, and they could make it good. My biggest concern is it the same thing again?
Yeah.
You know, and what is the kind of movie that they want to make for Deadpool 2? If he wants to keep it, Brian wants to keep it in the same vein of like not super giant budget effects, but have that kind of lowbrow, still street level kind of story and humor, but involving characters like Cable, which is going to be tough because Cable does not lend himself to that as much. Cable is a military guy. Cable is a character from the future. Cable has pretty heavy power set, a lot of guns, but that's not all the Cable is. Cable has a ship that flies around. I mean, if they want to utilize Cable the right way, that he's Cable, they need to change the tone of the movie for that. And so I just worry if someone comes in and is like, we really love Deadpool 1, let's make Deadpool 2 just more of Deadpool 1. What we've seen, the best examples of what Marvel's done has been giving each film a different feel, a different theme, kind of striking them differently. The biggest one's obviously the difference between Captain America 1, 2, and 3, although 3, I would argue, is more of just an Avengers movie done in Captain America. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see how it goes. But I really, I feel bad because I like what Tim Miller did. I have absolutely no complaints about what that guy did in this film. And obviously he's got the ability now to go on and pick what he wants to do next. Apparently just not Deadpool 2.
According to Fox, the breakup is amicable.
Yeah.
Between the two. And he's going to work on a movie. I forget what the name of the movie's called, but he's going to be working on a movie called Influx. That's what I thought it was. And it's an adaptation of a science fiction novel by Daniel Suarez.
Yeah. And I mean,
it's not like
there's still other X-Men characters that are both out or coming out with films. The promised and lied to us over and over again. Like, is this happening? Is this not happening? Gambit movie, which I think has changed directors multiple times, might still happen. There's the New Mutants movie that has been rumored as well. There's an X-Force movie if Cable moves from this over to that. There's so much potential for him to still do things in this universe even, and maybe even work with Ryan again, just not this particular movie. So I'm glad that people are keeping the peace too. Yeah,
and on to our final news story, and that is the all of season 2 of Jessica Jones will have something in common with Queen Sugar, and that is that every episode will be directed by a woman. And I say this because the showrunner, Melissa Rosenberg, was at she was on a panel for Transforming Hollywood 7, Diversifying Entertainment, which was held at USC's Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism, and they talked about how I think they had for season 1 they had like they just had like people who they wanted come in, and then they're like, someone mentioned, well, why not do all women? And she's like, oh well, yeah, I guess we could do that. And so this whole thing of there only being women puts it in a very rare category, with, like I mentioned, with Ava DuVernay's Queen Sugar, which airs on OWN, is the only other one that is in there. And obviously she didn't divulge anything about Jessica Jones season 2, but it's pretty cool to think that. And I hope it's more of these women are going to tell the best story, not stunt casting in that.
I agree. I think we all. I don't think it's like, hey, you over there, you've got a camera and a vagina. Come direct Jessica Jones. I don't expect it to be that at all. I do. I have feelings about some of these things, like can only transgendered people play transgendered characters? Can only women direct shows like Jessica Jones? And I think that for a time, yes, we should try to do those things. We should make that happen, because it just hasn't. It's not like we're giving up so much by making this happen now, when we have this chance to do so. And if it works out, then great. Then maybe more shows will invest in women directors and producers, and have shows that are about women primarily, and not worry about the fact that, oh, but who's going to be the guy factor, and how are we going to get men to watch this? Like, you and I both watched Jessica Jones and loved it, and it was absolutely terrific storytelling. And I don't think that I mean, my wife didn't watch it because she's not really interested in comic book movies. At some point I might try to entice her to get into it, because I think it's just a really good season of television in general.
Yep.
But I do think somewhere down the road, hopefully it becomes that it doesn't have to be this way, because we're trying to get people to open their minds to it. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, if it happens because it's naturally happening. But we're such a long way from things like that naturally happening, that, yeah, if we have to give a little bit of a push here and there, let's do that for right now. At the same time, I write stories. I've always been someone who enjoy telling stories. People who act obviously enjoy playing people who are different from themselves. And the idea of saying, well, you can't play this part, or you can't write this story because you aren't like the people that you're writing about, or you're not like the person that you're playing in the role, that's very limiting to what the dream is of being a storyteller or being an actor. And I think that we have to kind of understand that, yes, not every comic starring female characters should be written by women, just like every comic starring male characters should be written by men. That doesn't need to be the case. It's ridiculous to even acknowledge that as a thing. But when we have the ability to have women just be as looked at professionally as men are, then that's when we can start making those fights. But I'm still going to write what I write, and I still think people are going to act, and the parts are going to act, and it's just nice to see a little bit more of this happening for right now.
No, yeah, definitely.
Hopefully a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been the person to have, let's get the right people to make the best content for the thing that you're wanting to ingest.
Exactly. Although at the same time, we have just gotten to assume that the right people are dudes, because that's all we've had to choose from, or that's all we've let do the parts. So maybe we need to expand our search is what this is doing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, that is it for the news. And so on to nerding out. The nerding out is where me and Corey, well, we do that. We nerd out about the various things in our life. And I'm going to give a quick hit mention to something I really enjoyed. Issue 1 came out 3 weeks ago, and that was Cage. It's written and drawn by Gennady Tartakovsky. He's the creator of Samurai Jack, Dexter's Laboratory, was the main guy behind the first version of Clone Wars. And oh, sweet Christmas, this is so fucking good. Just go pick it up. It's I believe an 8-issue limited series. So you will enjoy it. If you've liked the Netflix Luke Cage, you will enjoy this. So Corey, you've seen Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency. God, that's a tongue twister. What did you think of it? And also, I should warn people that, hey, look, spoiler tag, spoiler written across my forehead. So there you go. If you're watching the video.
All right. Did you get to watch it?
I've only seen the first 20 minutes of it, but that was because I was so time crunched this morning. I started watching last week tonight, and then I found Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, and so I was watching that when I was in the bathroom getting ready, and then I got out, and I'm like, all right, let's finish last week tonight, and then I will catch that up, and I'm like, I don't even think like, okay, Corey's going to put this in there.
All right. So when I was young, many moons ago, in the early 80s, I discovered and read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. By the time I found it, I think they had 3 books in the trilogy, which is funny because you think that's where it would stop. That is not the case. Somewhere, probably after book 4, he put out a book called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to devour this whole because I fucking love Douglas Adams. I know exactly what I'm going to get from this. No, it was very different from, and it should be, from what I knew from the Hitchhiker series. And I'm not sure, even though I was a pretty avid reader and pretty, knowledgeable at that point in time, I'm not sure that I completely got it. Like, I didn't understand what holistic meant. I didn't understand a lot. I have loving memories of this. I actually think I enjoyed the sequel, The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, a little bit more than the first book. But it's been a long time since I've read them. I've got a collection around here of the 2 books, because unfortunately there were only ever 2 books that came out from it that I'm planning to reread.
I will mention that IDW is releasing based off of the manuscript.
Right.
For the 3rd, they are doing it came out 2 weeks ago, I believe, Sam of Doubt, which was the 3rd book.
Yeah. And so, yeah. Be that as it may, this is not a direct adaptation of the books, at least not as far as I remember them. This is Dirk Gently continuing being his Dirk Gentliest, insinuating himself in the life of this down on his luck guy played by
Elijah
Wood. And this guy is having basically what is just the worst day of a continuing life of bad days. Most of his life is pretty ordinary, but this day gets really, really bad. His day starts out, he goes out of his apartment to go to work, and his landlord starts beating up on his car, saying that he owes him money. And he's like, well, I just paid you yesterday. And he's like, what do I look like, a fucking historian? And he's like, how am I supposed to know that you paid me yesterday? Don't bring that shit to me. Just give me my fucking money. He goes to work and walks into what is essentially a huge murder scene, gets pulled in by the cops because he becomes their first suspect, and loses his job after that, gets back home, and this guy is breaking into his house, and that's Dirk Gently. we're introduced to him. Dirk Gently's whole shtick is he's a detective, but he's not a normal detective. He's not someone who takes a case, gets paid money, anything else like that. He works based off of, things in the universe just kind of fall into place. Things just sort of happen, and they happen the right way at the wrong time, or the wrong time in the right way. It doesn't really matter, but he kind of like picks up the clues and puts it together and follows a case even when he wasn't originally on it. And he's determined that Elijah Wood is now his new sidekick, his assistant. It's a little bit Doctor Who in the fact of like, instantly, I found you and you're my new companion. And Elijah does this great line of like, I'm not your fucking Watson. But I think Watson kind of feels like that in the Sherlock series currently on BBC, sometimes on BBC. We've seen this before. Part of Elijah's character is that he had a pretty weird disease that his sister now suffers from, which is sometimes they touch things or think things, they just react to things in a completely obtrusive way, like she's playing drums and she's holding a drumstick and suddenly her instincts kick in that it's actually a knife and she's being cut, or she can touch something cold and suddenly feel like it's burning and her skin is searing. And so it makes it so that she's afraid to go outside and she's afraid to just live her life. And part of Elijah's money problems lead to like trying to help her, and his parents, who at one point had money, were affluent enough, spent all of their money trying to get him help when he was younger. So now they can't really help her and they can't help him. And part of that's whole reason of why his life is so hard. A lot of other stuff starts happening and it all gets really crazy really fast. There is the introduction of an assassin who comes up and starts killing wantonly and runs into this guy. I'm not even sure who the guy is, but she kills the other guy that he's with and then comes up and tries to kill him. And then he's like, why are you trying to kill me? And she's like, because you're fucking Dirk Gently. He goes, I'm not Dirk Gently. She's like, how are you not? She's a holistic assassin in the way that Dirk is a holistic detective. I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought that was a good thing to add into this. There's also this group called the Rowdy Three, when there's four of them, which is very Douglas Adams-y again. I think there's a lot of parts in this that feel straight out of a story that Douglas would have written. That just kind of weirdness, and this bigger, fuller story that you're only getting little slivers of that starts to add up to something, and in the end will all make sense. But a lot of this comes down to the performances, and I think Elijah's actually pretty good in this. It doesn't feel too far apart from things that he's done before. It's not dissimilar from the one where he had the dog
Wilfred?
that kept, Wilfred.
Yep.
Except he's not getting high in this, as far as I know so far.
Yet.
And I wouldn't blame him if he did. But I think the hardest part of the show for me at the moment is the guy playing Dirk Gently himself.
Samuel Bennett, I believe is his name.
Yeah, he's fine, but he's just so clean. And he's wired in a way that, again, a lot of this feels like it's an attempt of doing the Doctor. Certainly a Matt Smith version of the Doctor, but just sillier.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay, but it's not again who I would choose. But it's been so long since I've read the books that I don't know who I would have chosen in particular. But he's young. He's not incredibly convincing in the part, but he's not bad. Overall, I liked it. I'm interested to see where it goes for the rest of the season. I'm not saying it's my new favorite show, but I'm willing to give it a lot of chance because of the subject material and because of Max Landis is doing it. And Max Landis seems to have a pretty good idea of how to handle the bizarre. And he is, again, being really respectful of Douglas Adams as a writer to make this story happen in the way it did, because it would be so easy to just hang like the idea of, oh, we're going to do Dirk Gently, he's a holistic detective, and not be able to bring enough weirdness to it to really emphasize what that character is and what his original stories are. But I think he is doing that. So I think that there's a lot of potential that's still out there while we're not getting any payoff yet. But overall, yeah, I think it's pretty good for a BBC America series. I'd like to see how it continues.
No, yeah, definitely. Sorry, I just saw the cover for the IDW Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. I'm like, wait, please tell me this is a that cover is Rob Gilroy, because it looks like a Rob Gilroy cover. But that's just me getting off topic. But yeah, I mean, I've seen the first 20 minutes of this, and it wasn't like, oh, it was crap or anything like that. It was, I'm gonna pause here, maybe even rewatch, so I can devote my full attention to it. Not, oh, it's on while I'm shaving and brushing my teeth and all that. Not at the same time, because that would be way too much hand-eye coordination. But yeah, it's one that, like, probably tomorrow morning I'll watch and be like, oh my gosh, it's so good, because I love weird, quirky things like that too. And yeah. But so my nerding out is a it is also a BBC America show, but it has not aired on BBC America yet. And this is the Doctor Who spin-off, The Class. And this, there's not really any big name stars, but Peter Capaldi is in the pilot, and I guess according to Beat, if you find certain ways, you could see the first 2 episodes. That actually reminded me, I wanted to check on seeing if iPlayer had them both. But this is a different spin or a different take on a Doctor Who universe show. And there, I was surprised when I heard. Ah, damn it! The second one is up there. And I'm gonna say right now, I love the name of the titles. So the pilot, the first episode was "For Tonight We Might Die." The second name of the second episode is "The Coach with the Dragon Tattoo." I love these titles. These are really creative titles, and I love it. But you're following these group of 4 students and their teacher. Well, you quickly find out that some S is going to hit the F, and that one of these students is not really human, and their teacher is his guardian, and not by choice. And there's some things in there that are explained. They do flashbacks really well, like with the origin. So the pilot does have the pilot does have a little bit of pilotitis in there. Like, they have to explain a lot. And it is a really clever, really cool thing that they do. They do have things set up for, at least the first series. And again, this is a British TV show, so I will use series. But overall, I really did enjoy the show. I was surprised when they swore, because I'm like, wait, what? Well, it's BBC 3, so I guess they can swear. But it was, with what I had heard, like, it wasn't going to be, but and it sort of makes sense. It wasn't going to be like Torchwood, where Torchwood was like the HBO of Doctor Who, or Stars of Doctor Who, where there would be a lot of swearing. There would be more adult
Doctor Who After Dark.
Yeah, Doctor Who After Dark. and then you had Doctor Who, which was for everyone, and then
You had Sarah Jane.
the Sarah Jane Chronicles, which was on CBBC, CBBC,
which is Saturday morning Doctor Who.
Yeah, essentially. This is this is the later seasons of Degrassi, Doctor Who. That probably my best way to describe it is that it's because it's this material that you can understand more, for the younger kids. Yeah, it's a classier Misfits. Thank you, Pete. It's actually a great way to describe it.
For American viewers, would you say that it's something that you might see like Doctor Who on Freeform / ABC Family, or is it more Doctor Who CW?
It's more actually that's a tough one, because in story wise, like how the characters are, I would say a little more CW, but it's in the middle. Like it's like maybe 51% CW, 49 freeform. But I would see for the potential for language, I would see it more on FX or FXX or whatever other FXXXXX show or channel that they have.
All those X's, that sounds more like Torchwood.
FX8, the Ocho. But no, it's honestly really clever. I liked Peter Capaldi in here, even for and they do give references to because it's set in Coal Hill Academy, and they revamped it to where it doesn't look anything like it did in Doctor Who. Like it's actually an academy, like they got money and all that, and you see there's little nods to Mr. Pink and Clara Oswald, and he even mentions that he was a caretaker here once before they got all this money and stuff like that. And it was good because they didn't hammer that in. It was just Easter egg, and it focused up on the kids and the teacher, and it was just brilliant. I mean, check it out. If you can't wait, if you're like me, you can't wait. There are ways to do this.
Do we know when it's supposed to be released in BBC America?
It's gonna be in, and this is the fucked up thing right now, in my opinion. It's on I think Space right now in Canada. Which I'm like, why do we gotta wait until March? Like it's like spring, it's like March or April when it's coming out. I'm like, why do we gotta wait that long? When here we get extra gear for this last season of Top Gear that they had. They did the extra little behind the scenes show called Extra Gear, and we got that on BBC America's website. But yeah, it's going to take longer than it takes to get Sherlock over here. Like Sherlock is, I think the first season was a week or so after it aired in England, and then it quickly became day and date. And I'm like, man, why so long? It's got Doctor Who in there. I mean, the nerds are going to eat the show up.
Well, I mean, they've got to figure out when it makes sense on their schedules compared to other shows that they have airing here. When is going to be the best time to put that into rotation? So,
no, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's too bad, but like you said, there are other ways.
But yeah, definitely. So that is it for nerding out. But next up is our discussion topic. And the discussion this week is we're going to talk a little bit about comic book movies. Hey, imagine that. But more specifically, we are going to talk about Kevin Feige explains why he's reluctant to bring Netflix superheroes into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this makes sense to me in a way. Now the article is on Collider, where they had this was during while they were doing promo stuff for Doctor Strange. And the question came up of, what do you think of the Netflix MCU, and do you think that any of those characters are going to make the big screen transition? And Kevin Feige said that it's extremely impressive what Netflix has done with the show or with the characters. And he said the short answer is it all depends on timing. And like he didn't say no, but he didn't say yes. You can expect them here, like for instance in Infinity War.
He goes on to explain that the way that they introduce characters into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the films is very, it takes a lot to do it, and they want to do it the right way. So in Civil War, they introduced us to two characters between Black Panther and Spider-Man. Before that, in Age of Ultron, we had a preview of them at the end of Captain America: Winter Soldier. In Age of Ultron, they introduced us to Wanda and Pietro. We got the Vision in Age of Ultron. We need to look at how does it impact the films to introduce these characters. What is the right way to introduce them? And that presumes that people who watch the movies don't watch the Netflix shows. Now, here's one part of that to consider, is that the Netflix shows are currently exclusive to Netflix. So if you're not a Netflix subscriber, you might not have the opportunity to see them. Like, you can go see the Marvel movies in the theater. You can get them on DVD later on. You can see them replay like fucking mad on FX. And somehow or another, I still keep watching them over and over again. But there's only really one place to see these shows right now. Now, I think they did release DVDs of the first season of Daredevil.
Yeah, but first season of Daredevil. They're honestly, Netflix has been a little bit slower on releasing Blu-rays or DVDs of all their original shows.
Why should they? That be something that they want to do. Netflix basically announced this today or this weekend that they are putting another $800 million into doing original content. Their goal is to get to 50% original content for their service. And there's been some complaints of like, oh, well, Netflix doesn't have all the really good movies and stuff. They're out of the top 250 movies on IMDb. They've got like 40 of them or something. It's like, yeah, but the top 250 movies are not necessarily all the people want to watch. Because I guarantee you, and I'm going to say I don't want to watch it either, but the Adam Sandler movies are not the top 250 movies. But people like to watch them. You know, there's a lot of things that people want to see that aren't Citizen Kane, that aren't Gone with the Wind, that aren't The Wizard of Oz, or even more recent things, you know, that aren't American Beauty or whatever. But that doesn't mean that there's not content there to watch on Netflix. But Netflix is being very serious about being producers of new content, of their own content, stuff that you're not going to get to see on Amazon, stuff that's not going to disappear off of their roster 1 month and go over to fucking Hulu or CW Seed or CBS's thing or whatever the next month. Like, this is shit that they will get to control for life. And, you know, the only way you're going to see it is if they want you to have access to it. And I think that's smart for them because it gives them longevity. Like, HBO has HBO to go. All of their shows can be there. And then they can also say, yeah, Hulu, you can get these. Or yeah, Amazon, you can play this old series for a little while. But eventually, if you really want to see all the stuff that HBO is putting out, you have to fucking subscribe to HBO in one way or another. I get that. But at the same time, if you're Marvel and you're like, hey, we're making these movies, and these movies, we want to get the broadest audience possible, you're kind of stuck if some of the content isn't available to everybody. So if you're the kids and you're like, yeah, I'm seeing Captain America and I'm seeing Iron Man and I'm seeing the Hulk all up on the big screen, who's this big, strong black guy that I've never heard of before, because not only do I not get to watch Netflix for him because we don't have a subscription, or we don't have fast enough internet because fuck you, AT&T, but also half of the Netflix series, especially between Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, is just people banging. It's just, there's some hardcore sex happening, and it is not for all ages. Like, you can stretch things in the PG-13 area on these movies, but when you get to Netflix, I'm not saying it's a hard R, but it's very R-ish. It might be a P. I don't know, but it's not PG-13.
What about a P?
Maybe a Q. What's the Q rating? I know that it's going to be difficult to get the mainstream audience to meet up with these characters without some savvy play. Now, there's a few things that are mentioned in the discussion about this. I read an article where they're saying, well, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't rely on the Marvel movies, and the Marvel movies certainly don't rely on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. One, I think that's only half right. Is it Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. always reacts to the Marvel movies? I think that's why we're getting a lot of magic-based stuff this season with the Darkhold and Ghost Rider, is because, oh, look, fucking Doctor Strange is coming out in just a couple weeks. And it seems like there's a sync up there. A lot of things, the biggest things to happen to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. have come out of the movies. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., some people say, didn't get at all watchable until the breakthrough of what happened with Winter Soldier and tearing up S.H.I.E.L.D. I think that that's unfortunately to the detriment of the show in some cases, but its reality is that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. needs the movies. What Marvel has done with Netflix is they've made these shows that, while they reference the movies in some degree by talking about the event that happened in New York, the incident, they don't need the films to exist. Now, the other side of it is that we were kind of promised that all these things tie together when they started doing this, and now they're going back on their words, and fuck you guys for that.
There's just one problem with the whole thing, and that's that the TV shows and Netflix ones, they do reference what happens in the movies. Like, I think the first episode of Luke Cage, they mention what was it? I think it was Civil War.
They talk about the incident that happened in New York, which would be the first Avengers movie. They certainly, in Luke Cage, they make a bunch of references to hammer technologies this season, but none of it is, they constantly say things like, well, if you're a god with a hammer, or if you're someone who gets big and green, they do make those things, but it's so tertiary to what the stories are. Like, they're all living their own lives. And in a way, that's great, because in the real world, not everything is going to be a gathering of all the superheroes in one place at one time. And not everybody's going to know each other. The only thing is that so much of this stuff happens in the New York area. It seems like at some point, someone from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or certainly from the Avengers, is going to say, hey, by the way, have you noticed that there's, like, supposedly this guy who's going around kicking people's ass? It looks like a devil. And this woman who murdered some dude just recently. And then this other guy who's got bulletproof skin walking around Harlem. But I'm not going to Harlem. Fuck that. And now there's some other dude who can punch through walls and shit. Should we do anything about this, Tony? Nah, fuck it. I'm just gonna make a fucking Commodore 64 build me a house. It's just that gets. I've said from the beginning, I have a problem with the one-sidedness of it, is because you're saying on a ranking scale is that one thing's more important than another thing. So if the shows can only be affected by the movies, but the movies can't be affected by the shows, it makes the shows seem less important. And the shows are to me, in a lot of ways, more successful because what they can do to build characters and build their villains is so great that the movies just haven't been able to do. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and certainly Peggy Carter, most of all, get to do a little bit more interaction with the movies, but they're not the success that these shows are. They're not seen as great a property. They're not seen as good of an acting or anything. And in a lot of ways, when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Peggy Carter have to accept the things from the movies and they have to react to them, it's to the detriment of those shows. Like the first time, absolutely, it's great that, you know, we find out that S.H.I.E.L.D. is infiltrated. It changed the game on the whole thing, but it was also really early in the series for that to happen, because it was like, here's S.H.I.E.L.D., here's like 15 episodes of S.H.I.E.L.D., and all of a sudden there ain't no fucking S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore. And I think that was too soon. It was too abrupt, but it had to react to the movies for that. And by the way, this guy that we've introduced you to for this first season, who's one of the good guys, is now suddenly not the good guys. That's like second, third season shit for Joss Whedon. But obviously this is not Joss, but it is Joss's people. And that's kind of what we were led to believe, is that it was a Joss Whedon joint. And all of a sudden it ain't. It felt like, okay, we have to make this happen now. And in that moment, it was great. But every moment since then where it's like, oh, we're going to introduce this thing, we're going to introduce this thing. And we've talked about the fact that Marvel has wanted to do and said they were going to do an Inhumans movie. But how the fuck can you do an Inhumans movie when we've been dealing with the Inhumans nonstop for the last 2 seasons on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and you can't reference that in your films? It just feels like at some point they're going to make a break between those things, even though Coulson's still saying things like, oh yeah, Nick Fury, he's a friend of mine, cool dude. But Nick Fury never references Coulson again. And we have that scene, which was a perfectly legitimate time to do it, when they bring up the helicarrier in Age of Ultron, and they showed that Coulson is the one who supplied it, who got it out of cold storage to get it to Nick Fury. There was a perfect moment of having S.H.I.E.L.D. back on the screen. Coulson or somebody from S.H.I.E.L.D. could have been introduced as part of it. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity. And again, it shows that they don't value that show. And of course they shouldn't. You know, the films make billions of dollars a pop. The show struggles in the ratings and gets moved to 10 o'clock. But maybe the show wouldn't struggle so much if it wasn't so much a one-sided deal.
No, yeah, definitely. But I mean, and it's, to me, it's interesting because, I mean, you look at Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and this is where I think again, you know, it is one-sided, but seeing all these stuff happen from the movies, it's easier for it to happen in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it airs weekly. It's not a binge all the stuff right now like it is with Netflix, like with the Netflix Luke Cage or Jessica Jones or Daredevil, Punisher, you know, insert whatever show it is here that is owned by Marvel and airs on Netflix. Because then it's almost saying you have to create an appointment time for people, like, okay, get caught up and watch up to episode 6 on Luke Cage before going and seeing before going and seeing Doctor Strange. And because episode 7 we're gonna have a big tie-in.
Yeah, but you're talking like that in the middle of the season, which is not necessary, because there are breaks between seasons. We have what unfortunately feel like way too long breaks between seasons, or between one show and the next show, and they could easily time that so that one series ends before the next movie comes out, and then after the next movie comes out, the next series starts, and we get to see some reaction to that. It's just getting them onto the screen at that point.
Yeah.
And honestly, we had to deal with that with Captain America with Winter Soldier, because you had to be up to date, and then you had to go see Winter Soldier the weekend it came out before you watched the next week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to get the full impact and understanding of that. And I think that was much more difficult because some people weren't watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or weren't necessarily, maybe they were just DVRing it and hadn't caught up in the last couple episodes. Or for me, it was just like, fuck, I have to go see a movie on opening weekend. That's not really my thing. I don't often do that. But I can't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again. And thank God someone like Glenn warned me. Is like, this is a game changer. You've got to go see this, and this is going to really affect Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. next week. It's like, okay, great. You know, so partially a spoiler, but realistically, it's more just like, and it's on me to get it to that point. But we deal with that, and we've dealt with that in comics since I was a kid in the 70s. It's like, if there's a crossover, it's like, yeah, go pick up this issue if you want to see they're out of this story, or why all of a sudden the Hulk is in this area and fighting Wolverine. It's like, oh shit, I should probably go pick up the Hulk then, if I can find it.
I will say though that this is old territory, and the fact that, you know, Marvel has done this with the comics, you know, forever. This is also still new territory in the fact that you have that I think that was the first season where they did that with Captain America Civil War with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And they did do it to opening weekend. The next time they did it, it was either they gave you a couple weeks to watch the movie before they tied it in. And granted, it wasn't a huge tie-in like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or with the Winter Soldier it was. But it seems like they're slowly learning what to do, like what's okay, because of the fact that they are in this, they're breaking new ground in this whole, well, we've got movies and we got TV, and they're all happening at the same time. They're all sharing the same timeline. So how are we going to do it? It's what they promised with the Dark Tower.
I mean, and the thing is, the movies do this already. Because at this point in time, you have to watch all the Marvel films because they all interconnect. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to skip Ant-Man, and then you go and you watch Civil War, and you're like, who the fuck is this guy? You know, what is this reference that he's making that I don't know because I didn't want to see Ant-Man because I'm Team Edgar Wright? You know, you already are dealing with that in the movies themselves. So maybe, yeah, you're sparing us a little bit of the pain by saying, well, we're not going to also make you watch the Netflix series. We're not going to also make you watch these other things. But it's that kind of half-assing it. That's what got people so pissed off at DC for not having the CW actors be in the films. It's like, we've already got a great Flash, and we've got a Green Arrow just fucking sitting here. And I don't want to say nice things about the fucker who does the Justice League films, but he could probably do better shit with Arrow than what's happening in his own goddamn show right now. I'm just like, you, Marvel, set us up with this. You set us up with an interconnected universe. You set us up by saying that the shows and the movie stuff happen in the same universe. That was a promise that you made. You put it out there and you set that forth. And it's worked gangbusters for you. So to not follow up with that now, and I know there's company politics behind the scenes, and Fahey's like all happy to not have Perlmutter like dipping his dick in shit anymore. And he's like, you know, and Perlmutter's like, well, fuck it, we're gonna destroy the X-Men in the comics and fuck the Fantastic Four too, and all this other shit. But realistically, when it comes to the people who are watching this and the people who are the fans, especially the hardcore fans, the ones who are like in it for every ounce of it, it's kind of unfair that you promised one thing and then you said fuck it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. It's such a tricky thing, to be honest, because you have, like, DC. This is where one of the things where DC could benefit from the fact that Marvel's already done things, that Marvel's already, you know, said, okay, it's a shared universe. And it's where DC's like, no. But I still believe that no is a possibly because of the fact that they have storylines that could happen with um Earths that are I don't know of a plenty, and sort of deal, like I don't know, like they could call it like maybe a crisis or something on these infinite Earths, and
That
be
is
just
such a bullshit cop out. Like I've said that from the beginning when they're like, "Oh, it's like we have multiple versions of the fuck you, because if it doesn't wind up on the screen, then it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
If there's not a reaction of, oh, we're seeing this other universe, and like, oh, well, we have a Flash and they have a Flash. I mean, they're already doing that on the show,
Yeah.
to much better effect. That the movie thing, they're just like, that's just fucking lip service.
No,
And
yeah.
I will accept easily because, yeah, I'm a guy on the internet, but I don't really give a fuck. I will accept when you say, yeah, we're keeping them separate because we don't want the people who do the movies to have to be tied up with the shows and vice versa. And let's be honest, some of the people who are actors on the shows aren't really ready for movies at this point. Okay, we'll spend the fucking Montreal dollars for them to show up every week and film this stuff, but they ain't getting up on the big screen anytime soon. I can accept that, but don't fucking shit on my head and tell me that it's rated Cocoa Puffs, because that is fucking bullshit, and I will call you out on it, motherfucker.
I'm actually going to end it right there because I want that to be the ending for this topic. And that is going to do it for the show. And, you guys can help us out by supporting us going to our Patreon at patreon.com/Galactic Netcasts, I believe is the correct one. Or just basically going to gncasts.com/support, or the easier route, because you already shop on Amazon right now, go click our affiliate link also at gncasts.com/support, and then do your shopping. Whatever you are going to buy, you're going to buy yourself a Kindle Fire, you're going to buy yourself, whatever it might be.
Some of the things we talked about tonight, the Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency episodes, you can get through Amazon. We've got a link to that in the show notes. The book, the original novel, we've got a link in there. You can get on your Kindle, or you can get the print. Gregor's pick for Cage #1, you can download that from Amazon as well. So we've got links for all those things. If you wind up clicking the links, and if we manage to entice you into buying any of those things, that will help us out a little bit.
Yes. I believe 3 or 4% goes to us. And by us, I mean the royal us of Dave Nelson, who he in turn uses that to keep the lights on the proverbial house that is Galactic Networks. But yeah, so you can do that. You can also contact us by leaving us a voicemail at 805-328-3966, or emailing us mail@ElseNerds.com. Please email us if you want to be a guest host when we for the month of November. And you can join us on our Facebook page under Galactic Network, and you can follow the show on Twitter at ElseNerds, or the network at Galactic Netcasts, or is it Networks?
I don't know that he's been able to change the Twitters, so that's a good question.
Do a search for Galactic Networks, and then you can find our producers at Beatmaster80, at Mr_Fusion, and I'm at that Gregor. And Corey, you can find all his comic book stuff at Don't Ask Comics.
If you go to CaptainSparity.com right now, I did write a short story that I just put up on the site last night. So if you want to check out something, it's not exactly a Halloween story, but I wanted to get it out for Halloween.
Yes. And the final thing to be said is this has been a Don't Tell Glenn production. We will see you guys next week.
Or else Cocoa Puffs.
Raining down.